Amen. We began our first Biblical Expo of 2017 with the study of one of the fathers of the Old Testament and a very important biblical character. A lot of time in our studies, we throw names out without really giving an understanding of who they are, where have they been, and the purpose of their lives. In 2017, our theme for the Biblical Expo is that the sanctuary is open. And our sanctuary here at Christ Temple Church of Christ Holiness USA, the sanctuary is open without restrictions. It is a time for us as Christians to examine who we are, where we have been, and where we're going. And today we're going to study the life of Jacob. And I find his story particularly intriguing because we get to see his whole family and how they interact with one another. And in modern day language, let's just say that Jacob came from a real dysfunctional family. And we will see the influence of bad parenting on Jacob's life. And as we study about Jacob and we learn about Jacob, we learn about his dysfunctional family. I want you to think about how bad parents can have an influence on the children. So we're going to head into our study of Jacob. It is my premise to teach you that Jacob had a messed up family, but his family life shaped him into being who he was. And what he was going to do for God. Jacob started out as a manipulative person. He related to others by manipulating them. He tried to control life, and he depended on himself, not God. And as we go into the story of Jacob, we'll realize that God had to break Jacob of this bad pattern of relating. So we're going to study what is revealed to us about the life of Jacob and his family and see how God finally got through to him. It is significant that the author of Genesis spends 10 whole chapters on Jacob. He only spends 11 chapters describing the period from creation to the flood to the Tower of Babel. He spends 14 chapters on Abraham, Genesis 12 through chapter 25, in which we see the establishment of God's covenant with his people who are called the Jews, who were the Hebrews, the Israelites. And after a brief mention of the descendants of Ishmael, and if you look at about what Ishmael was Abraham's mistake from a human perspective, but we know from God's perspective, there is never a mistake. God always has a purpose and a will for doing things. We begin the saga of Jacob. It is also significant that following the extended treatment of Jacob, the independent man, we have an extended section dealing with Joseph, who was the epitome of faithfulness and dependence on God. I know I said a mouthful, but as we go through this study, we're going to go all the way through Jacob. Should take us all the way out to about February, to where we'll deal with Black History Month as well as it relates to Jacob in our study. Because what I want everybody to understand as we do this and we talk about it, the two questions that you need to ask yourself is, where have you come from and where are you going? Where have you come from and where are you going? Those are the two most important questions as we do this study of Jacob, the life of Jacob, all the way until the end of February, is to relate to yourself is where you come from and where are you going? Let's give a brief overview of Jacob. We cannot forget Jacob's father, who is Isaac. I was searching and I've read Genesis from the 12th chapter all the way to the 25th chapter. I read it 3 or 4 times because I was trying to find out what was Isaac's significant contribution besides giving birth to Jacob. And I couldn't find it. And I had to dive a little bit into the human perspective of things and come to find out that Isaac's major contribution was his passive acceptance. He accepted his father's near sacrifice of him, which is good. But the main point of that story was not about Isaac, but it was about Abraham's faith. Isaac did nothing else of significance in the entire book of Genesis. There was nothing more significant that Isaac did that was significant than his passive acceptance of allowing Abraham to be used by God to see how faithful he was. Isaac didn't even go out to find his own wife. Moses met his wife at the well. He delivered her from bandits. In hindsight's 2020, and this was a foreshadowing of him of delivering of Israel. Jacob met his wife at a spring. He had difficulty removing the stone so he could drink. That was a foreshadowing of the fact that Rachel's womb would be closed and they would have difficulty having children. But Isaac didn't even go to the well, he didn't go to the spring to search or find his wife. His father's servants went and found a wife for him. And they brought her back to him, and Isaac was coming from a well when he saw the camels and his wife coming forward. I think this gives the readers an early clue as to his passive nature. And because of his passive nature, he allowed his wife to take over his household. Jacob's mother, Rebekah. Some scholars have said that Genesis 3:16 was the precursor for the women to have the tendency to lead if the man does not. When it says the woman's desire will be for her husband, it means that the woman's desires will be to rule over her husband. Because the next phrase says, but he will rule over you. That's why I encourage everybody, go out and take yourself an advanced English grammar class so you can actually understand exactly what Genesis 3:16 is saying. There's one interpretation, but there's many revelations. So you can only interpret Genesis 3:16 one way, but you can get many revelations out of Genesis 3:16. And now if you did your advanced grammar class and you did your English class, you will notice that there's a prepositional phrase, there's some indirect objects. And you know when you do a prepositional phrase or an indirect object, you have to cross it out. You also know that the verb there is will. But what is that verb? What noun is that verb connected to? And you know that you cannot connect a verb to a prepositional phrase, so it would have to go over to the next verse over there. I know I said a mouthful, but where are all my English majors at? You'll understand what I mean. So the desire of the woman is her natural tendency is to rule over the man. That's her tendency. That's what she's going to do. That's what happened, is that she has a tendency to rule over the man. And sometimes if the man is a noodle bag, if he's just an okie dokie, he'll just be like, okay. But if he's able to stand up and take his rightful place where God has ordained him and set him out over the management, the household, everything will come together. Where they're not competing to see who's going to rule over the house. And they're not competing about the gender roles because they know what gender roles they are. It comes into order to where they can be that helpmate. So the natural tendency for the woman is to try to rule over the man. Now watch this. That's why I told you about Isaac, and Isaac was a passive acceptance. Because Isaac allowed Rebekah to take over the house. She took over the family. She took over Jacob's life. Let's read Genesis chapter 25, verses 20 through 27. Genesis 25, verses 20 through 27. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian of Paddan. You got to forgive me about these names. The sister to Laban, the Syrian. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him. Rebekah, his wife, conceived. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and then the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. Verse 25. And the first came out red, all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. You can see that Rebekah already had problems. When her twins were born, she showed a partiality to Jacob. You know, the non-hairy one, the weaker looking one. So Rebekah takes over Jacob's life because she believed Jacob to be the weaker one, and she already had a weak man that was a passive acceptance that allowed her to take over the house, and now she sees Jacob, who's also a weak man that she can mold and manipulate to do things with. Watch this. Jacob was raised by his mother and not by his father. Jacob learned how to manipulate people from his mother and not his father, because his father was passive acceptance of things. Jacob had the tendency of being passive acceptance. We'll get into that as we, because he had 2 wives. We'll get into that story later on. So he had the tendency of being passive acceptance, and then he had the tendency of being manipulative. And let's go, and this goes. So she was the one. She teaches him how to cook. She arranges for him to get the blessing. She arranges for his deliverance from Esau by sending him to her brother Laban, telling him everything will work out fine. Rebekah, from the birth of her sons, caused division in the family. Rebekah, watch this, had an uninvolved father in her life. How do we know that? If you go back to Genesis chapter 24 and you read verse 50, you'll learn that it was Laban and Bethuel who consented to Rebekah being married to Isaac. Bethuel was her father, but Laban spoke up first before the father. So she had an uninvolved father figure in her house. So since she had an uninvolved father, the mother must have been strong. And since the mother was strong, she taught Rebekah how to be strong. Because it was, back in those days, it was based that the father was the one who arranged the wedding. They put all the details into place, and they set forethought, and they said, I'll give my daughter for this, I'll give my daughter for this, and this, and what else that you got. But we know that Bethuel did not participate. It was Laban who participated, and Bethuel was the one that was a passive acceptance of giving his daughter away to Isaac. So she had an uninvolved father. Is it possible to think of is that Rebekah saw Isaac as an uninvolved father with Jacob? She sensed that Jacob was going to be neglected because Isaac favored Esau, because Esau was the hunter and Isaac enjoyed eating the venison that Esau would bring in. Esau was a strong hunter. He was everything that Isaac was not. And perhaps Isaac, being a weak man, being a passive acceptance of what happened, he was reliving his childhood dreams through his son's life. Everything that Isaac wanted to be, he saw Esau doing it. And so he was encouraged Esau to go out there and to be a hunter. He favored Esau. There was no reason, but watch this. Think about this. Isaac had an illegitimate reason to play favorites with his sons, but yet he did. I'm sure that this had an ill effect on Jacob. He probably, watch this, had to manipulate his father to get attention. Genesis chapter 25, verses 28 through 33. And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Look at that division right there. And Jacob sowed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, behold, I am at the point to die. And what profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, swear to me this day. And he swore unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. The first thing that we learn about Esau is that he was a skillful hunter. I'm not sure that this was such a great compliment for Esau to be a skillful hunter, because hunting was unnecessary because they had a large herd of sheep and there was plenty to eat. So this means, if you break it down from a human perspective and you look at where, and you use those two questions, where'd you come from and where are you going? Watch this. This means that Esau, where are you going, Esau? Esau was always hunting. He was never home. So as opposed to being at home, helping with the chores and helping with the sheep, we might conclude that because Esau enjoyed hunting and that hunting was insignificant because they had a large herd of sheep, that Esau was an irresponsible person. The verses that we read support our conclusion that Esau was irresponsible. We do know also, not only was Esau irresponsible, but he was also impulsive. He did not take his birthright seriously. Three things. Well, make a note of those three things. He was irresponsible. he was impulsive, and he didn't take this birthright seriously. Esau lived for the moment. We also know that he didn't care about God's law concerning marrying foreign women, because Esau later married a daughter of Ishmael to try to please his father and not God. But it was too late. Even this is a paradox, because it shows that Esau cannot escape being out of the chosen line. His new wife is not of the chosen line either. Think about this. Watch. We go back. You got to go back to Genesis, where before they were born, God told Rebekah that the younger one was going to rule over the oldest one. God had swapped the birthright away from Esau and gave it to Jacob. That was predestined. And we can also see right here, as we get into it later on in the scriptures, that Esau, not only does he mess up the legitimacy of his line, he wasn't going to have it, but he goes further on the detriment, because he wasn't trying to please God. He was trying to please his father. And watch this. He was already out of the chosen line. Right? And when he took his wife out, when he took his wife from Ishmael, he also took his children out of the chosen line. Some of y'all will catch that on Sunday. See, some of the decisions that you are making in life now are decisions that will affect your children in the future. And a lot of times we don't think about that. We don't think about, if I do this thing today, will this affect generations down the road? Will this affect my marriage? Will this affect my relationship with my children? Will this affect my relationship with God? Sometimes when we do things and we do decisions, we don't think about the consequences of our actions. So as what we just read and what just covered, everything that we talked about Jacob, we can see that Jacob came from a fairly typical family. His mother had a tendency to want to take control. His father let him. His brother was just a natural man concerned with the things of this world. This is the kind of family that Hollywood models for us. And a good example, y'all forgive me, I'm a child of the 80s. A good example of that was The Cosby Show. So how did all of this affect Jacob? We've already seen some of it, and we're going to get more into it as we talked about the rest of the family. But let's work through so we're going to work through the 10 chapters, and we're going to see what we're going to learn about that. And let's go back to Genesis chapter 25, verse 34.
Genesis 25, verse 30. Pastor, as you can see, I've just walked in. Foolishness.
Yes, sir. That's okay. That's okay.
No, and I would like to apologize for a simple misunderstanding. Because I heard you start, and I asked Big Man, we were talking, we were like, oh, he's just going to prep. We just thought you wanted some time to prep. And that's why I stepped in earlier, and I was like, oh, I looked at a few minutes, so I stepped out, and I've been sitting here waiting, eating with him, and I was like, well, maybe the other members are coming in, so I was trying to give you a little time to do that. And I was like, wait a minute, ain't nobody here yet. That's why I was sitting there waiting for somebody to come in. I looked at the clock, and I was like, Jesus! For that, I apologize. That was my mistake. So I will ask you something on my personal if the other whether they're here or not. I would personally ask this of you, Pastor, if you could give us knotheads a roll call, because with food in my mouth, I wasn't paying no attention. I personally, as somebody, as one of God's children, would appreciate it, so I don't make this mistake as always.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
asking my brother to help me make sure that I stay on the path and don't stumble, because I feel bad. I apologize.
Oh, no,
You
no,
know, I was
no.
listening to your sermon in there, and I was really liking it. It's like, yeah, I need to wait. Why am I in here? That's what I was sitting there looking, going, they're not coming, and why am I waiting? He said 2 or more gathered. 1, 2, get in.
No. See, one of the things that we did before, with the sanctuary is open. Is you don't have to come to Bible study if you don't want to. You can stay and you can fellowship in there and
you still can be in the Word.
You can still be in the Word.
Okay, what did you say? This is in the Word. That's in the midst, and at least you're in something. I would rather be in either the Word or in the midst rather than be in the streets.
Yeah. So that's one of the restrictions that we
relieved.
if you just want to come and enjoy the food, and you just want to come and fellowship with the brothers and the saints over there.
That's a beautiful restriction removal.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, because I've never, it's always kind of like in your head a restriction.
No.
To me, I'm just saying.
Right.
But I think that's a beautiful way of putting. I don't think I've ever heard that, because there's always been a separation in any church I go.
That's true. It's always been.
That's why I was like, no, I'm glad. That's what I'm saying. I'm glad you pointed it out, because that's a beautiful veil removal. That's not necessary. In this particular case. In other days, maybe, but in this case, yeah. Thank you.
Because God's, if it's important to you, just like now, you came in like, oh, it's important to me now, let me sit down.
Yeah.
God's going to make a way for it. I got, brothers, we getting ready to start. Y'all coming in? That ain't God working. That's me trying to get you in here so you can hear what I'm saying.
Right.
Now, if it's God, when it's time for you to hear, okay, this is my cue.
And that's why I brought that up, because as I've learned in the Bible as we've walked, I figured out there are 2 ways of things. So at this time of my walk, one is to see it and understand it. Another is I've been looking at the body and the brethren, and I'm learning what it means. This year, I'm trying to learn what it means to ask for help, to be okay with asking for, I'm going to say not help. It is help, but it's assistance, because I'm willing to do it, but I need a little balance with my brother to make sure I'm on balance. That's why I asked, like I said, if I miss something and you see something, Matt, thanks. And that to me is what the Lord said. He's like, help your brother. He may not need love, but if hey man, I may miss this, as you're going, so-and-so, that's that, and we're supposed to bring each other along for that, and thank you for that option, because I think that's beautiful. But because you're right, you were talking, and it was just, I was sitting there looking, and I'm like, and that's what came over. Why am I in here?
Yeah. God's gonna make a way for you.
He did, because I'm like, it was, why am I in here, and who are you waiting on? That's what really got me. I was like, why are you waiting for other people?
Yeah. I'm gonna
Go
start
off
with.
and see my father. Y'all get here when you get here. Yeah, thank you. That made my heart better.
Amen.
I've already learned just from that today. Look what he gave me right there. I'm gonna put you in here and let you see if you're listening to me, or you just come for show.
Oh.
Because that's what it was. I mean, that's what it felt like. I was looking in here and I kept going, and I literally heard you talk about, as we were developing deeper in the chapter, and I just looked, and my heart said, why aren't you in there? And who are you waiting for? And when I heard those 2 things, I said, hey, bro, you might want to come. Oh, okay, I'll be there. I said, well, you do what you're going to do. I was like, you didn't hear that? But I did.
Right.
Thank you, Jesus. Okay, now where are we?
Genesis chapter 25
Genesis.
and verse 34.
Genesis chapter 25, verse 35. I love Genesis, but if they got me one more time, my head, I'm trying to keep up with them names at one point. I was like, I don't want to know that many people.
Yeah.
Genesis 25, chapter, on page 40. Got it. 25, 40.
So, and then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. I'm on 25, 30?
34.
34, okay. 25, 34, and those 5. Okay. Esau, hey, go. Got it. 34. Continue, please.
Yeah. So we read where Esau gave up his birthright to Jacob. He gave up his birthright to Jacob because he was hungry. He thought he was going to be near death, so he gave it up. But where we read earlier in Genesis 25:23, and this is a promise that God gave to Rebekah. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. So God reversed it.
He reversed the man's pattern.
He reversed it.
Yeah.
So the birthright was already taken away from Esau because God already promised. He told to Rebekah. We talked about that. Rebekah is the one who's in charge over the household. She's ruling over the household because Isaac is passive acceptance.
That's right. So she ends up taking the reins because
She's taking the reins because he won't step
so
up.
Somebody's got to step. My mom say just because the man's supposed to be head of the household doesn't always mean he's qualified. And I looked at Dad, she goes, not him. I'm like, okay, good. As long as it's not my old man.
Yeah. So that's her. That's her tendencies.
That's her charge.
That's the woman's tendency.
Right.
The woman's tendency is to try to rule.
Yeah. She tried to find over
The man has already been ordained and set and say you're supposed to be ruled over the woman, but you're supposed to do it as a teamwork, as a helpmate. There's not supposed to be any competition between a man and a woman. Each one's supposed to know their roles. Each one's supposed to know where they fit in. What happens is that the man doesn't know his role, so he try to beat the woman into submission.
Okay, I've seen this before.
And so she submits not because she wants to. She submits because she's getting beaten and she's scared. And then you got the role reversal.
Right.
Well, the woman's natural tendency, well, man, if you ain't stepping up, I'm going to run over you.
Right, yeah.
And this is what happened to Isaac. Isaac didn't step up. He's trying to relive his childhood through Esau. Esau was a hunter. Esau was out in the field. Isaac was, as a child, Isaac was just, Because if you remember, Ishmael used to pick on Isaac.
Yeah.
So
it shows you the balance, right?
So Isaac, all through his life, was always passive acceptance. He accepted whatever was happening to him. Other people had to step in. So now he's got this son, Esau, who's the hunter. Goes out there and gets him his food and bring in some meat. And I wish I could do that.
Yes, the envy of the balance.
So Rebekah raised Jacob because Esau
It's too soft.
wasn't home. He was out hunting.